Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samira Tilley, Marketing Manager at Assemble Systems. Our webinar today will cover how Balfour Beatty uses Assemble. Now let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Tim Kelly, Partnerships Director at Assemble. Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Samira. And what I'm going to do real quick is, as we typically do, run through today's agenda. We'll go ahead and do some quick intros of ourselves and our companies. And then today, Balfour Beatty is going to spend a little bit of time talking about their needs and why they chose Assemble and ultimately the way they've rolled it out across the organization to, as the title says, reduce some of the chaos that happens through the day-to-day process. So with that said, I am Tim Kelly, Director of Partnerships at Assemble Systems. And my time in the industry was started at a general contractor. Coming out of Texas A&M construction management program, I went to pre-construction department. I did some estimating for a while in both 2D and 3D. And then I shifted focus into the field for a number of years before stepping over to Assemble. Since at Assemble, I work with, I think typically the VDC folks on the call, estimators and other project team members to understand some of what Buck is going to talk about today and some other use cases that we see out there to better progress Assemble into what you guys need. So with that said, Buck, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi y'all. I'm Buck Davis with Balfour Beatty. I am a project solutions manager. My background in the early 2000s was in civil study and development. I was a project manager until the market collapsed 2007, 2008. I had to transition into high-end residential construction sales and then wound up with a construction technology group out of Atlanta, implementing and training on laser scanning, robotic tunnel stations, BIM 360 products, a wide variety of different solutions with a lot of general contractors and mechanical firms. I found my home at Balfour Beatty, working with them on the Avatar theme park in Orlando, and I've been here for the past couple years working with our Florida division, implementing solutions and kind of fine-tuning our process.
So before we do get started, I'm going to quickly introduce Assemble, and I'll do that kind of in our 5 key points. So Assemble, as a product, we consume model data and allow your team to share that across our platform with other team members, other stakeholders in the project. So we are a SaaS-based organization. That means there's no hardware or software to download. It's a simple login through a web browser. Very little training. It's easy to get up and running. And anyone can use it. Anybody with a typical computer on a web browser, you don't need any specialized equipment there. What we allow your team to do is condition the models and organize the data in the way you want to see it. So if the idea is to reclassify all of the components in the model by a bid package, so you can summarize or aggregate that data by the way you want to see, group and sort and filter it how you need it, you're able to do so. Then once you do that, you can actually push that information out to other systems. We allow you to connect to reporting engines like Excel or Power BI, as well as some partners like iSquareFoot for bid solicitation or Procore for project management. Within Assemble, you're able to understand how the model changes over time. Buck's going to talk a bit about this today, but you're able to manage individual model revisions and see the changes as they occur. So you actually get a timeline of the progression of the model as you're using through the course of the project. Lastly, in our analysis, we actually create a bidirectional relationship with the authoring platform, so you can push this information back to Revit, and when consuming the data as you're conditioning it and organizing it for your use cases, you're able to then report on that information and actually see how things change, how progression happens, or use it in a day-to-day decision-making session on the project. So in any of your project meetings, you're able to pull up and query the model for minute subset of information that might be pertinent to the particular discussions at hand. So with that said, Buck, why don't you go ahead and step through a little bit about Balfour.
Yeah, real quick for anybody that know Balfour Beatty, construction's been around for 80 years. Nationwide, we have 4,200 employees. We're in, I would say, 5 or 6 different countries, probably more than that. I'm a little embarrassed to say. We are a top 10 domestic builder, and my division proud of was ENR's Florida Contractor 2016. And, you know, the image you're going to see here on the left, we have 4 pillars that we strive for at Balfour Beatty: zero harm, zero waste, client advocacy, and employee inspiration. Everything kind of rolls up, if you see, towards operational excellence. Project solutions, my group, my department, rolls up around there. So, you know, our job is to responsible for implementing solutions and creating process to drive that operational excellence. You know, I appreciate everybody that logged in today, and look forward to kind of sharing our experience with Assemble Systems. So, you know, in the role, constantly looking for better ways to make my teams more effective. You know, anytime we look for a solution, it comes from a need. So, you know, when we found Assemble, our needs, which I'm sure a lot of people on here are winning a lot of work. We're pursuing a lot of work. We have tons of pre-con requests coming through our pipeline. You can't. There are not enough great people out there. The people that we have in our office, we got great estimators, we got great ops people, great employees. How do we make them more effective? So the needs that we had were improved estimator efficiency. We have to stop looking for changes. You know, 90% of the times we get a 50% set, 70%, 90% CD set. We spend countless hours just looking through, flipping through, doing comparisons just to see what changed. Additionally, we wanted to increase our ability to kind of monitor the budget and make sure that, you know, as design process was happening, we weren't losing track of our client's budget. We also wanted to be a way to identify and track cost drivers, have a greater transparency with clients, be able to kind of share what was driving, you know, our cost and where our numbers came from. I personally, for our BIM team, really wanted ability to scrub the model data and also share that with estimators. We wanted to be able to break up big bid packages. A lot of times we would get large projects where we might have one structural model, but for the purpose of what we were doing, we had to break that up into 3 or 4 different bid packages, and there wasn't really a, I guess, effective or easy way for us to do that, short of just spending quite a bit of time in Revit. Additionally, more widespread model access. You know, one of the things that we found really strong about Assemble was the fact that it's on a web browser. You know, not everybody at our company has a computer able to run Revit. Not everybody at our company wants to even know how to use Revit, but they still need to be able to jump in and view a model, pan around, see where we are at any given point in time. And lastly, you know, we needed a better tool to have discussions with the owners about change orders. You know, a lot of times we take projects on, design's still happening through the construction process, and you know, when we go to an owner and we tell them that, you know, cost has gone up, or there's a change that's coming down the pipeline that they can expect a change order from, you know, that becomes an argument, or it becomes a tough discussion. You know, and one of the things that Balfour strives for is continued clients. We want to work with clients. We want to keep them, want to make them happy. So we needed a way to make that a little bit easier and a little bit more transparent visually. So those were our needs. And, you know, the next slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so before we jump to the next slide, I'll kind of weigh in and say this I think we hear pretty commonly across the industry as needs. When we talk to, you know, clients that are working with general contractors using Assemble, often we hear that there's this need for transparency, and there's this perception that the entire industry is a black box. You deal with a lot of fighting and negotiating as a general contractor, and tools like Assemble and Buck talking about the change order process and being able to show and discuss things around visuals. That's always a huge win for the clients when they're able to you know, feel and experience the transparency that's happening and be a part of the discussions with the, you know, the visuals and the data right there in front of them. So that's such a common thing that we hear all the time as we're talking to different customers of ours in the industry.
You know, one of the things that I brought to Balfour from the consulting days was the ability to sell things, knowing how, you know, companies buy things. I think the first thing, if you ever find something that you want to implement at your company, is how are we gonna purchase this, right? You find a perfect solution, you go and you hear these common things. Who's going to pay for it, right? Where's the money going to come from? It's not in our budget. We hadn't budgeted for this, which in a lot of instances, you know, you can't budget for what you don't know that exists, right? You find something middle of the year that you need, but you didn't have in your budget. So do you wait for next year, or do we work through this? This is one of my favorite is the models are never right. Right. Anytime we talk about leveraging models for estimation, a lot of estimators will just tell you, save it. You know, we're good in our 2D workflow. The models aren't developed enough at the time. You know, we get these early on to get enough information for them. And in many instances, there have been a lot of, I guess, oversells in the industry as far as, you know, what the capability of extraction for quantities are. So, you know, I think there's a little resentment in some instances that people just don't trust those numbers. Next one up, can't BIM 360 glue do that. You know, I hear this constantly. I think, you know, one of the things about that is that not everybody knows what all this stuff does. A lot of times project solution managers, other VDC people, BIM people, we know what these solutions do, but outside of our office, outside of our group, they don't. So next one up, this is great. And then Tim, I'm sure you hear this quite a bit, that we're just going to wait for the right project. You know,
absolutely. Daily we hear the next project up, it's going to be the right one.
I think you called me 3 or 4 times and I went to try to get approval, and it was, you know, we're just waiting for that right project. So the other one, I have to learn another software. We're buried in work. Is this something like Vico, and why would operations ever use this, right? So let's jump over it, and I kind of want to share, you know, the way my tool for overcoming these objections, and I think it's treated me well here at Balfour, you know, with getting approval from my bosses. You know, we have to be cognizant, who's going to pay for it? Our business unit leaders, the initial thing they're going to say is no out of the gate, because everybody's asking for things, right? You know, they have a fiduciary responsibility to our company to protect the budget and drive revenue and profit. So, you know, you kind of got to think about how you're going to sell it to them. When people say that money's not in the budget, it's never true. If there's something that will make it more effective and there is a actual value savings, I've never seen there not appear money, right? If we know we can save time, if we know this is the right thing to do, budget we can figure that out. At least that's right. We can.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes, and you're going to get into this in a little bit, but oftentimes there's money that you're saving, and so you're actually making the purchase out of the savings that are found, and so, you know, maybe there's not additional budget, but if you're proving through the case of using this that you're saving beyond the cost of the product, that's why you buy products, right? You're actually making sense out of something and making it do something for your project.
Well, completely, and I think, you know, it kind of goes back to that leap of faith. You know, why do we model? Why do we do BIM? Why do we do coordination? You know, it's always hard to come up with an ROI because, you know, inevitably we're trying to avoid things in the field, but you can't quite recognize what that cost was if you avoid it. So I think this goes hand in hand. It's the constant struggle. The models are never right. I have to agree, and I'm a BIM person. I understand BIM. But I think the best way that I got my estimators on board was walking over and saying, I get it, the models aren't perfect, right? We're never going to replace you with a software, right? You have to empathize with those people. And then you kind of have to pitch the fact that, hey, they're not perfect, but what can we do with what we have? Let's leverage this information, even if it's nominal. They can't BIM 360 do that. I bring it up again. You got to know your audience, right? A lot of times when I walk up or when people, my team run up and they go, you know, oh my God, estimator, I have this great software, it does X, Y, and Z, and they kind of get this blank look on their face because you didn't really present it to them in a manner in which they were ready to absorb it. The let's wait for the right project. Our process doesn't change project to project. That should never be an excuse. The way we approach it is the exact same, whether we're doing a detailed estimate or scope sheets. We are going to approach an estimate in the same manner every time, so that shouldn't be a hurdle. Have to learn another software. I think everyone in the project solution business, everyone in construction, everyone in mechanical firms, there was this kind of surge of all these apps coming out, and people get app overload, right? So there's a hesitancy, and you have to explain how easy something is going to be, and it really needs to be able to be picked up in less than 30 minutes and make someone effective, right? Already buried with work. I'll tell you, our teams here, we're bought out for the next 2 years. We have work. People are still doing pre-con. They're still getting us under contract for pre-con. Our estimators probably have 4 or 5 projects in the wings just waiting. For me to get buy-in, I just told them, I'm going to do the work, right? I'm going to do the grunt work up front. I'm going to show you that this is going to save you time, and then you're going to do this on your own. You're going to take it and run with it. The VICO thing at Balfour, that's kind of a touchy subject, and we'll keep going. But, you know, why would operations use this? I think one of the best ways that I've gotten buy-in on projects, project solutions, hardware, software, anything, is finding a way that operations can use it and leverage it. You know, when you have an operations, a project team that finds value in something, that's built out to a project. It's not built out to overhead. So the discussion doesn't even have to go up the ladder, right? If you get a good project manager, project executive to get buy-in, they have budget. They can purchase that there. And I think that was one of the best ways that I've been able to drive. So I just wanted to share this with the folks online because, you know, one of the things is there's all these great tools, but you have to be able to overcome those hurdles, and you have to be able to present it in a way that you're selling internally. So just talking to this is going to be about how we bridge the gap with Assemble Systems. And I just want to give Tim and the team at Assemble a shout out. Once I realized I wanted to implement this solution, you know, I was excited, just like I was saying. Called Tim and I said, Tim, you know, how do we roll this out? And I'll let you kind of take a stab at what you told me. So.
Yeah, I think so. Typically what we, I think I've done this a dozen times over, but it starts with a conversation. It's a conversation with your pre-con team. It's a conversation with your operations group, and it's a conversation oftentimes with the designers that you work with. You know, I think when you're starting a project, or even in the course of a project, as Buck mentioned on the last slide, having a conversation about the use and what you want to do with this data and how you think this data can impact the project for the better. It can start as small and as simple as a single project and a single use case to do a single change order review. And that conversation then can grow from there. From my own experience when I was a customer of Assemble, it started that way, and it was proving, like Buck said, he's going to do the grunt work to prove it out. It was proving in those little minuscule ways, the one-time use case on a project to have the project manager turn around and say, well, what else can I do? Right, Buck? It's always that, well, what else is in there? What else is next?
Oh, completely, Tim. I think, you know, when you ask those questions, you know, what are your headaches?
Yeah,
you know, a lot of times we try to go out and sell a solution as opposed to going out with nothing in our hand and just say, what are you struggling with today? You know, and our team was sitting out there. I got tons of change orders. I have to have a discussion with an owner, you know, about almost $1 million on a $600 million project. How do we sit down and not just argue point by point by point, right?
That's right.
Is there a better way to do this? And that's where kind of Assemble jumped off the page at me. So let's jump to the next slide. I'll kind of talk about how we worked with y'all, rolled out this project. So Tim's advice, and I think this kind of jived with our internal team, was set up two different projects. One was an active estimate we were working on currently. So what I did is I loaded up the model files, scheduled one-on-one meetings with our estimation team, brought them in, didn't do a lot of training, just asked them, you know, what are you responsible for? What quantities can we get? We investigated the model, panned around, started grouping things, showed them the ability to tag model components, group things, showed them the 2D, 3D capability, and then just saved the views and let them go on and sent them the Excel spreadsheet that you get out of this. They loved it. For the past project, and this is kind of tough, anytime you're doing, I guess, a pilot with an estimation solution, it's tough because when people start talking about the beauty of comparing things, well, a 30-day trial doesn't quite get us there, right? You know, we have a 50% set, we have a 90% set. That can span longer than 30 days, and how do we keep that excitement? So we loaded up a recently finished project, 50%, 90% in a CD set. I scheduled a meeting with the director of estimation. He came in and sat down, and he had his notes from that estimate, and I showed him the comparison, 50% to 90%. I just said, you know, is this similar are the trends that you're seeing based off those models similar to what you saw when y'all were doing your 2D estimate? You know, you were doing your quantity takeoffs. And if you look through it, I mean, gave it a full, honest look and said, hey, can you go 90 in CD, right? And we did that as well. And then he said, could you show me 50 to CD? And I showed him that, and he goes, man, this is amazing, right? This is exactly what we saw, but you just showed me in 20 minutes what took us 2 weeks digging into the numbers with 10 people, you know? So I think immediately he had buy-in that this was real. Our project executive I brought in, showed him the same comparison feature and just said, hey, would this be something, you know, through the design process when you're about to get write up a change order because the design changed, that you could visually show an owner and say, this is the change. It happened right there, and that's the quantity that's driving this change order. And they were like, you know, this is blown away. This is great. We're not going to have as many arguments. We'll have discussions, and, you know, we'll be able to show what happened. But having the ammunition to support that spreadsheet, those numbers, those change orders, blew them away. So after that, just showed it to him. And then, you know, what we saw was all of a sudden our estimators started coming back, right? They came back and, hey, can you get me, you know, 3 more numbers? How does it handle casework, right? And I think it was amazing because that was the first time estimators had actively sought me out, other than asking me to do things in Navisworks or me to get some of my guys and team to go out there and, you know, do quantity takeoffs or try to get, you know, schedules in Revit, which anyone that's looked at a material schedule in Revit, if you export that and send it to an estimator, they quickly throw it in the trash can or ball it up. It just doesn't allow them visually to see what that represents.
I think on setting up an analytical approach like this, I mean, you have here structured things that you're looking for on a known set of data, a known project, where your estimator's already spent the time. And to be quite honest, I think this is the type of evaluation that I love to see when people are doing trials of our project of Assemble that are interested in using Assemble. When you can provide your own data set like this and go through this sort of process, then it certainly allows for what your next slide is, which is actually digging into what the results are and providing the analysis based on, you know, the real live and collected feedback from the team. I love it.
Yeah, and just to ping you, the quote we have up there before you hit enter and bring in our other stuff. Don Rolfe is our chief estimator here at Balfour Beatty. Man, he's a good guy. He's been here. I mean, most of our estimators have been here 15, 20 years. It was funny. I showed him the 50, 90, and CD set, and literally the next morning he walked in, and he was like, okay, so I have another model for you. Can we sit down and see what we can get out of it? Because a lot of times he's tasked with just the feasibility of an estimate, right? We don't want to put our team on that yet. An owner just kind of threw out a budget, said they had a design model. You know, Don can typically look at 4 or 5 sheets. We got a couple people here in our office that can look at 4 or 5 sheets and get pretty. We know whether we're in the range to do it or not, right? We know if that's something we're actually going to go through the process of throwing in front of our estimators, put it out to subs to get a firmer number. But, you know, when he came in the next morning and had, you know, 2 different files for me, I knew we were kind of on to something because he had seen value and we were saving him time. And anytime you can save a guy like Don Rolfe, a guy like Warren and Bruce in our office time, man, we can get a lot more done, and we free them up to do more effective things. So let's go through the results real quick, if you don't mind. 100 hours per estimate, and that was per Don. On the first estimate, we leveraged Assemble Systems. That was literally just not looking for changes. We got our first data set in at 50%. We got 70% in, and I was able to go through all the quantities that our estimators come in and tell them, hey, don't worry about concrete. Concrete didn't change. Don't worry about glazing. Glazing went up 5%, or adjust your number accordingly. But look at all this, you know, this curtain wall that got added. Look at all this, you know, all these knee walls and whatnot that got added, all the curb. You know, that stuff is driving cost. Don't worry about all this other stuff that didn't change, right? So the great thing about that is it gave our estimation teams the ability to actually focus on the stuff that mattered, the stuff that did change. They were able to get more nuts and bolts and really look at what was going on, which I think more than anything, the 100 hours saved, it wasn't so much saved, but it was transferred to more effective work. The other thing we saw is, which kind of blew me away, was the estimators were actually started adding data to the process. I simply showed them how to go in, and we'll go over that after this, and just select something and add the information they wanted. One of the things that we have sometimes conflicts with early on would be like our door schedule or window schedule. We look at our plans that were released, and then we look at the model tags, and they don't always jive, right? So with Assemble, they were able to jump in, update those door tags in the model. We're able to save that, so when the next model iteration comes back, we can pump that data right back into the other model. No data is lost. Ability to share this information with an owner. I think our owners, they don't always know BIM. They don't always, see value. That's our job, right? Our job is to take all this great stuff the architects has given them or they paid for and make it valuable. But, once they started asking, hey, could you pull it up? Could you send me an invite? Can we walk through what changed just to show you, so I know what's going on the design side? It really has been kind of eye-opening. And if you think about it, how many times, and I even sometimes forget the fact that a lot of people were just used to looking at 2D. I mean, we have superintendents that from the day they start looking at a project, they're looking at the construction documents, right? So sometimes when you actually start showing them and give them an easy way to look at a building and investigate objects, it really does open them up to, this is what we're actually going to build. This is what that roof looks like. This is where the development is. Additionally, we already talked about the cost discussions, but I think holistically it was a greater value of BIM. I mean, the job that I'm here to do is to bring different groups together. Our BIM group and our estimators historically have not been, I don't know, peas in a pod. They're on one side of the office, we're on the other, kind of other pre-con, and nowadays we're walking back and forth the hallways and we're actually sharing information and talking, and that's the goal, right? So, I mean, Tim, do you have, I guess y'all probably seen additional, value come out of this stuff, but can you share some of the other ways, that you're seeing people have great results?
Yeah, and you mentioned one thing that I love, and that's whenever you train a group of estimators that you really don't expect, I'll just be honest, don't expect them to get into a model and use the software. And then, a few days later you get in and they've actually coded and organized the data the way they want to see it, and they're really using it because you're in a common data set. I love seeing that. And I'd say in a lot of cases, people point to how easy it is to train and use Assemble. And most of the time what that means is that you do have that collaboration amongst users that aren't typically going to look at the model in the first place. So you get exposure to that data. Like you said, the model's paid for and created by the design team. It's there. So why not expose that information to estimaters and schedulers and project managers that just would, in the typical sense, without Assemble, not ever even look at it. So I think the testimonials that we hear often are, man, I really didn't expect these guys to use it. Now that they are, I'm getting so much insight. And now that they're adding their, their knowledge and information about the industry to this data set, we can really key in on that and use it later on through the course of the project. So when you have that, that constructability review that happens, in pre-con, and that data is maintained and captured, like you said, and then leveraged, potentially during a design review session later on or value engineering session, so often you're able to recall that information that may not have been captured without some process like this.
Oh, completely. And I think, there's this last couple great speakers I saw at Autodesk University. We talk about one of the big, there's a guy, John Anderson at AECOM. I think he just became the global director of, I don't even know, he's got a cool title. It's analytics and process. And one of the things that he was harping on is his job was to stop data droop. So throughout the process, you go from a spreadsheet pro forma to a design to a model to this, that, and the other, that there's data that gets lost, right? And I think one of the great things with Assemble is as they're designing, as that's changing, we don't have that data loss. We're mitigating that, and it really has made an impact. And I think one of the things that you told me to do was start slow, train easy, just give them one or two things. So getting into a project, which we'll jump into in a second, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I think the first step was just to Just to get them and show them that on the left side of the screen, or actually let's go live and I can kind of walk them through the training that we did if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So for everyone out here, this is going to be a structural foundation model for a project we have at downtown Miami. What you're going to see over here is going to be the 2D sheet that came in with that model. Okay. The way I trained my folks is you always have this model tree over here. This is going to be all the different models that we have published. Is just to get over here and see what you want. I click on structural foundations. I go up to change visibility. I hide others, and then I'm left with just my structural foundations. When I look at an object in here, if I select this, I can come over and I can see this is where all the sheets where that's found, right? So I'm looking at level 1 foundation plan, and I'm going to come in here, and the cool thing about this is, you know, most of our estimators, they're used to 2D, right? They don't necessarily know what this is. And sometimes, you know, the good estimators, they get this, they see all this line work. But the nice thing is I can select this and it's selected my model. Cool thing about that is then I can click on properties and I can come over here and see what properties there are, right? That's cast in place concrete, it's 7 feet, volume's 2.96 cubic yards. I got my area on it. You know, there's a lot of information. This is typically information that would never be given to them because it just dies in the model. One of the other cool things that you'll see, so the model properties actually come from Revit, right? But where we started finding value in this, and let me actually close this and get back to this. So if you look at this sheet right here, this is bid package 2, okay? Problem with bid package 2 is it's inside of this overall model. Okay, so how do we start tracking that information? Well, the cool thing about that is, and I'm not going to go through each little section, but this is all in bid package 2. I can now select all that, and if you notice, it's all selected in the sheet version. I can come over here to my assemble properties, and I can type package 2, right? Hit enter. I'm going to add that information and hit save. Okay, it's going to update. Going to close this. I'm going to open up my inventory. Let me make this bigger.
As you're reorganizing that, I'm going to jump in and say you guys were actually seeing Buck using split screen. Just for those of you unaware that are using Assemble, both viewers have the ability to be popped out. And by pop out, you're actually launching another web browser, you know, whatever browser format you're using. And it's actually bringing up another connected tab, essentially. So he can pop that out, and for those of you that have multi-monitor, dual monitor on your desk, you can slide that on over and expand your workspace. So just wanted to make sure that people understood how your screen's set up here.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm using this on one monitor, but the nice thing about this is in Windows 10, if you slide over to the monitor and you see that kind of little catch right there, now it's split screen on one screen. I can then bring in my model on a different screen and have it to where I'm working on 2 screens, model big, sheet big, estimate over here, which is really nice. I mean, I think sometimes screen real estate and how you juggle all this stuff on one monitor is tough. So
yep.
When I came over here, I can organize this by my category, which it initially was, which is my foundations. But since I put that metadata, that tag in, I can now go to this bid package. And now I can see bid package 2. That is everything I selected that was in bid package 2. If I want to go back to my model, which is sometimes a nice way to do this, I will jump into this. I'm going to, let me get my real estate set up. I'm going to pop this thing out.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you collapse that model tree, you may get a little more space there as well.
Yeah, so now that I've assigned, let's just assume I've assigned everything I want in bid package 2. I want to move on to the next bid package. Okay, let's just go through and say this. So I'm going to say I'm going to hide everything that's bid package 2. And now over here, I'm just drilling down again. Maybe this is bid package 3, right? So now I'm going to come over and we'll do this package 2, package 3, excuse me. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to come over to 3. Let's just hide that. And then everything else happens to be in bid package 4. So I'm going to go to quickly toggle down, hit save. And then now I'm going to come back and unhide all, which is pretty kind of cool. I can come over here to structural foundations, unhide. right? And now I'm looking at them broken up by packages. So I got package 2, package 3, package 4. The beautiful thing about this is an upfront setup time. I do this one time, and then when I publish the next version, if you notice over here, this is version 4, I can quickly come back and I can say what happened to bid package 2, what's going on in bid package 3. You know, if I don't see any changes in bid package 4, maybe the designers are still working on bid package 2 and 3, and 4 hasn't quite been touched yet. But it's a great way early on where either a BIM person, a project solutions person, or estimator can kind of organize the information in the model the way that they want to see it throughout the next, 3 or 4 releases, and then kind of track how those things are changed, which is great. And I know that we all love applications and whatnot. One of the best features that our estimators still love is the export to Excel. I typically don't include the instances, but just to show you kind of the output on this.
As he's pulling up Excel, I'm going to jump in and say we also have a direct connection to Excel where we have a plugin, and you can use your existing templates and push data into those templates. So there are a couple of methods to get it out into Excel and Power BI and other systems. So
great thing about this is I can come in and clean up my columns if I didn't do that in Assemble. And then I can just shoot this out. If I want to add, a column over here that's a calculation of this, I can do that very quickly. The 11th hour, they're all these different solutions for estimation, but Excel seems to still be that 11th hour where we go, right? When we have to get something out to an owner, we have to get something out to a subcontractor. This is real quick. In a lot of instances when we're creating scope sheets, it's nice to use this as an audit when we get subcontractors sending in their numbers. Is where did you come up with a quantity of 632 cubic yards? Where did that come from? And being able to look through here and say, well, you're at 5, what did you miss? And I can quickly go back and walk them through what's driving this quantity of 632 based off the sheets. And then they say, oh, I missed that sections of footings. I had that in bid package 3, not bid package 2. Great. We have alignment. We've worked together, and we're moving on. So just a quick touch, that's how we're leveraging it. And I would really suggest to anybody out there, not just a shout out to Assemble, this really has been a game changer for my division and my region. It really, really has brought operations, estimation, and pre-con together with this one consistent source of truth, easy access, and then being able to pull out information so we can kind of audit where we are on things. Tim, I'll let you kind of wrap it up, man, but this has really been a great experience. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of pointing back to that 11th hour in the approach, one of the challenges or things that Buck mentioned early is that estimators sometimes or often don't trust the model data. They said, the model's got garbage information, I don't want to trust it. Well, Buck kind of showed that connection between 2D and 3D, and the reason that as a product we wanted to incorporate 2D documents with the connected data is so that you can validate that. You can actually turn off your 3D viewer altogether, make those selections as he was doing in the 2D or by your groups in your inventory, and then compare that directly to what you've done in your takeoff. It makes it really easy to do spot checks and validation against that number that he said, maybe you're off by 5% or 10%, and you can pretty quickly dial in and understand where things might have been missed in the estimate or how things need to be changed or conditioned in the model. And it really allows the team to, he mentioned this 5 times over, collaborate and communicate to one another quickly. So having that visual representation, and I say this often, a picture paints 1,000 words, but a model paints 1,000 pictures. It's kind of a saying we hear often in the industry now in the VDC space, but it's true. It gets people to the same level playing field very quickly. So you have that ability to consume and understand the data more readily. What Buck is doing right now is actually using a show changes feature where we actually can show what's been added, removed, type name changed, or quantity changed, and you can very quickly see visually and in the index or inventory exactly what changed and how much impact that is in both quantity and cost if you've added that.
So this is huge just to be able to look and see before we even investigate anything, just to be able to say, look, all this has been added. The quantity changed, which means they were probably working up on doing a little bit more detail work on those foundations. I don't see a whole lot of type in quantity changed over here. We've had instances, and Tim, this is I think one of the places where our management in pre-con loves it, is where you open it up and everything is green and red, meaning that when we're paid to go out and do an estimate, right? We do a 50%, we do whatever, we're contractually bound. All of a sudden we see that 70% come out and everything has been removed, everything has been added. It's a new estimate. I can run down the hall and say, don't look for the changes. This is a brand new estimate, right? Go back through and hear the new numbers. But we can also go get, more billables from those clients because literally they've just sent us a whole new set.
The great thing is when you're looking at, this is across, I don't know how many sheets you've got in this particular project, but you're looking at pretty wide scale changes in these two cases, and being able to quickly identify for each of those packages where you might expect to see changes, like you mentioned. Okay, let's look in quadrant A because that's where a vast majority of this change, and in quadrant C it doesn't look like they've done much of anything at all. So make sure we're focusing on A, and it really helps the team to align, with that just initial check and review. It's so easy to see and understand what and where has changed. So thanks to Buck and Balfour Beatty for contributing and allowing you guys on the line to kind of listen in to what they're doing today. So I really appreciate it.
So thanks for everybody attending, man. This is great, and I'd reach out to Tim. He's been a great partner, and Samara as well. And they really do support you through the effort and make sure you're successful. So that's going to be my commitment to them because they did give me a lot of help, and we are off to the races now in a big way.